Hello and welcome back to the Book, Business, and Brand Building Summit. Here we are on a very special day when you're really going to learn all that it takes to not only turn your book into an online course, but how to leverage online courses as one of the best ways to amplify the message, the training, the information that's in your book, and turn it into a teachable program that can access customers and clients all around the world. Save yourself the travel fees, save yourself the thousands of dollars of organizing live events, and instead take it to the internet by using online courses to really build out the business and brand side of your book, your knowledge and wisdom. And today, so excited to be joined by the CEO of Thinkific, none other than Greg Smith, joining us from Canada. Greg, how you doing?
Great, thanks, Jesse. Great to be here.
Now, is this the studio behind you where these online courses are getting created day after day, week after week?
We create a few courses, but mostly we do marketing videos in here, and so yeah, we do a lot of that stuff in here now. The odd course, but much more on the marketing side.
Nice. I like the feel that we're sort of inside of the studio here, where you guys yourselves are producing video and reaching out to your audience. And, so before we jump into this, I'd love for you to just share, in your own words, a little bit about Thinkific and your guys' mission, and perhaps even how this company came into being, how you ultimately decided to start this company. And I know from our pre-interview chats that you yourself have a rich history in creating and delivering online courses. So we'd love for you to share that with our audience.
For sure. So I was teaching in a classroom a little over 10 years ago and wanted to reach more people. And I looked at a variety of things. I started writing a blog, started getting a bit of more exposure that way. Actually started writing a book, and which I still haven't finished. We were talking about that earlier. And eventually I put together an online course and shared that through my blog, and was able to go from reaching, 20, 30 people in a classroom to reaching thousands of people all over the world with the online course. And that was a decade ago. And since then, that was a hobby at the time. I was practicing law and eventually started making more money from my online course than I was from my legal career. And people started asking us how I'd created my online course. So we eventually created Thinkific as a tool or a platform to make it very easy for anyone to go out and launch their own branded online course to build their brand, build their revenues, and build their business with. And so we launched that a little over 4 years ago and have been at it ever since. Nice.
And maybe you can actually talk a little bit about, that course that you created. What was that process like for you before you had, I'm sure that you built a lot of your learning experiences into the Thinkific model, but, what was it actually like for you to go from working on that book and then ultimately building an online course and having that income surpass what you were actually making as a lawyer, which, I'm sure took years and years to get to that position. And were you surprised to see that happening?
Well, so a few questions there. The initial process was honestly a bit painful just because I had no idea what I was doing, and there really wasn't much in the way of software out there to do it, which was a huge pain. I got my brother to build a bunch of stuff for us, and we were shooting videos in my living room. I remember unplugging the fridge because I didn't want background noise and everything melting while we were shooting all these videos. But eventually learned a lot from those mistakes and have tried to, and also even just how you structure the course. The initial course, I made that probably, I've remade it 4 times. So made the whole thing, and then 3 months later said, we didn't do a good job of that, let's rebuild it. So we've kind of taken everything we learned in that whole process and built it into Thinkific just to make it easier for people. And then in terms of the surprise of surpassing the legal income, yeah, it was, I loved practicing law. We were working on, I did securities and capital markets, so huge billion-dollar transactions, and was looking at a pretty successful career as a lawyer, but the course just took off and did even better. And plus, I as much as I love practicing law, I just love sharing knowledge with people even more. So it was just such a great opportunity to get in and do that full time.
Yeah, I'm curious about the transition too, and I know you have a ton to say on creating online courses, and we're going to dive into that. But I think both myself and our audience is sort of interested in that progression towards starting a business as well. So, was it a pretty clear transition from seeing the success of your own online course and then getting the idea, okay, well, what if we made this into a platform? What if we sort of institutionalized the best practices that you had figured out and made it available to many other people through, your business and the Thinkific brand?
I'd say it was a bit of a slow process of realization, because for a while there I left law. I actually had another business in advertising and technology. Then I was focused on marketing my own online course, and that was going well. And it was, what it really was the repeated calls from authors and other educators saying, how did you do what you did? So I remember one in particular. We had a guy who had a textbook out, and he was teaching some classroom stuff, and said, hey, I saw your stuff online. It's a little bit similar to what I'm teaching. How did you do it? And it was repeated phone calls like that finally started, I'd like to say I saw the vision years in advance, but it was just lots of people calling. And that's sort of what hit me over the head repeatedly and said, you've got to build this for other people.
That's really good. And I think there's a valuable takeaway there, perhaps for everybody listening to this, that, if you've got a book out, or if you're already engaging with people on the ideas that you teach on, talk on, that you espouse as an author, as a thought leader, then you may already be getting the indications that people want to go deeper with you, and that an online course could be one of the very best ways to go about doing that. If you listen to Greg's experience of people asking him, how can I find out more, or tell me more about this, and then ultimately having that transition into building an online course, I think that's a great segue from, focusing on one aspect of leadership, writing, getting content out there, and doing it in a way that has the potential to make a lot more money. So, since we do have an audience primarily of authors and entrepreneurs, maybe you can share what some of the best practices you found are for authors to move into being online course creators. Definitely. And, what's sort of the process that, somebody watching this now should start to internalize and visualize as they're moving in this direction?
Definitely. There's a bunch of ways you can go about doing it, but the specific process of taking a book that you finished and saying, I'm going to turn this into a course, is, I would say a few things to really focus on is being succinct. So you're not going to get every word that you have in your book into an online course. If you sort of stood there and read your book into the camera, it's not going to add a lot of value to people beyond what you've got in your book. And it's going to take you forever, and it's going to be hours and hours of content, and it's probably not going to be super engaging for people. So I actually would summarize things, and I would focus on really from your book how you want someone's life to be different when they finish reading it. And that's kind of the main vision for your course. That's what you're working towards. And then you work backwards from there in terms of milestones that will work towards that life change. And that's kind of how you put together, and those can be pulled from the chapters of your book, the different sections of your book. And then within those milestones or chapters, you can split it down into sub-steps or steps that lead up to them. And each of those little steps should become sort of a 2 to 7 minute lesson. And what this does is it gives you a really nice framework very easily. I mean, you can do this in a few hours from your book to give a good framework for your course. And from there, you've got a great structure to get started. It means that you're actually going to have a better course in the end. It's going to be much easier for you to produce. You don't have to produce a monster epic, 20-hour course. And you're going to add a lot of value for people by kind of summarizing the key points that you want them to get through. And then you can do things beyond that to add value on top of what was already in your book. So creating things that are more engaging, creating groups around your course, things like that.
Yeah, I think that's really useful even for me to hear. And the couple of online courses I've created ended up being kind of like monstrous, like 12, 14 plus hours of video content. And it felt like a lot. Maybe it is a lot. What do you recommend for authors that want to move into this space, do online course creation, but not necessarily create the next Star Wars trilogy worth of video?
That's a really good one. In that, so when I wanted to create my first online course, what I wanted to teach would probably take 80 hours, and that's sort of where I wanted to go with it. It would cover everything that I wanted to convey. Instead, I was lucky. I had a brother who said, you know what, just get the MVP out, get that minimum viable product out, share it with people, see if anyone even cares. So I did a course that was 2.5 to 3 hours. I sold it for $30. And that really gave me a lot of confidence that people cared. And I actually saw that I didn't need to kind of teach everything in the course. I didn't need to share all of the extraneous details, especially when people are learning online. In a book, I think people sometimes want to go a little bit deeper. They want to have some of those extra stories around it. In an online course, when people are watching video, sometimes you don't need all of the extraneous information. You want to focus on the steps that are leading them to that end goal. And then you can work the stories in as supplemental material. You can add it later. You can build it into your groups or coaching or other things that you do around the course. But especially if it's your first course, I would say narrow it down to something you can kind of deliver in a 2 to 3 hour roughly period. Otherwise, for a lot of us, you can get hung up on creating a course for months. And it should be something that you can do a lot faster than that, especially if you've already written the book or have a good understanding of what's going into the book.
Yeah, and well, I think that's positive news for my ears. And if I were to go back and do one of those earlier courses again, I'd probably take that approach of having something a little bit more scaled down, maybe a couple hours, but focusing on really delivering punchy, actionable information instead of doing a full brain dump and thinking, oh, I've got an online course now. I've got an avenue where I can just share everything on every topic that I know.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Like you're a little more experienced in this space than someone who's just starting out. And eventually you can kind of work up to. So my course right now probably does take people 50 to 80 hours to complete. It's in test prep. It's a law school admissions test preparation. So I kind of have to cover a lot of those things, but there's no fluff in it whatsoever. So, I think after you've done your first one, then you can start to, in subsequent ones, add to it, build upon it, have bonuses, have extra modules, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, actually, I'm curious on your perspective on this, since you did a course on law school preparation, and even when I hear that, my business brain starts to ring an alarm bell, because it's like, that's brilliant, because there's always a new group of people going through the test prep cycle. There's always a new class of people going to law school and entering into what you could call your market or the sweet spot for that course. So, what tips can you provide to our listeners on how to position their course so that they're really meeting the market, so that they're really meeting the customer demand, and ideally in a case where there's like an evergreen interest in what it is that they're teaching, because I think it is different than a book, and I really want to dive into that with you.
Yeah, so it's an interesting space that mine was in, and I think you can tap into that a little bit more online, in that, as you said, that sort of steady flow of leads. The nice thing about that is it really allows you to do a lot more testing. So you can start with the 3-hour course, and then you can switch to the 7-hour course. You can start with $30, as I did, and now my course sells for about $400. But I've tested so many different price points over the years and so many different ways of selling it. So that's one of the beautiful things of being able to sell it online, is you can just play with so many different avenues, because you do have that sort of recurring source of leads. Now, for some people, you're really building an audience that is a loyal following. Like, I think you have a loyal following around you. I know you do. And so sometimes when you have that, you might take a slightly different strategy, because you might not do quite as much price testing. If you have that loyal following that's watching you for years, you don't want to be having rapid price swings. So in that case, generally, I suggest moving your price up, not so much down. Because if you move it down, the people who buy early, don't feel so great. So things like pilot courses, or, hey, this course is going, one of the things where I saw some of the biggest jumps in sales in my course was saying, course has been selling really well. I've added a few new things to it. Price is going up next week on Friday. This is your last chance. It's never going to be at this level again. And slowly over the years, I've moved that price point up, and that's worked really well. So especially when you have that more loyal following, or people who are following you for years, that can be a great approach to take.
Yeah, and I mean, that's really good advice too. I'll sort of speak to my own experience just a little, because it illustrates your point. For a few years after my own book came out, Lifestyle Entrepreneur, I found myself teaching people how to build location-independent businesses, how to do lifestyle design. And that was definitely more of like a personal brand. As I've moved into publishing, and I think this summit sort of draws the final line, after which I'm fully focused on authors, author training, author support. And as I was moving into this space, I created a online training course called Bestseller Campaign Blueprint. And speaking to your point about raising the prices incrementally, when I initially launched it, it was at $197, which I thought was so competitive, considering I was teaching it live over the course of 8 weeks and then turning that into videos that could be replayed and stored in a members portal. But after getting that initial class in, I'm really glad that I priced it low and pretty competitive at the outset, because it got a lot of engagement. It got a lot of people in. And then over the following couple of months, I stair-stepped that up first to $297 and then $497. And then ultimately it had sold it, from stages and so forth at $997 as, a full complete video training course, plus like a phone consultation and a few other bonuses. So, I've never dropped it down even close to $197 after that. And hopefully everybody that's watching this can take away that even if you start at a lower price, it's definitely possible and perhaps even ideal to stair step the price up, which kind of sounds counterintuitive in some ways. But I guess I'll speak to, another company in the space, Udemy, which I'm personally not a big fan of, because you get a course up there and then there'll be these like discounts, so it's like 90% off, and I just think that undercuts the value, both real and perceived. If somebody's spending $100 on a course and then 3 days later you can get it for like $9, then you're wondering, what did I really pay for? So I recommend for everybody watching this to follow Greg's approach, which is to incrementally add more value, make it a greater experience, and raise the price and let people know that you're doing so.
Definitely.
Do you have any more to say on course pricing and how you perhaps justified or substantiated those price increases and the communication around them?
Definitely, yeah. In fact, we just you were asking about what we've used this room for. We just created a course recently on pricing courses, so I'll go into it. But in fact, actually, if your audience wants it, I'm happy to share it with them as well. If we don't get into all of it here today, but one of the big things on the pricing I find is like you said, stair step that up slowly, communicate it to people in advance. It's a good story to tell. It's much better than the story of I can't sell my course here, so I'm dropping the price. Or I do occasionally use coupons and discounts, and there's a time and a place for that. But moving it up. The other thing is I constantly look for ways to add value to my course to increase it, so it's not just necessarily a series of videos. One of the biggest ways we see people adding value to courses is having a private group. So something like a private Facebook group where there's a lot of interaction. I saw someone recently having a course where
Greg, sorry, let me just see if you can adjust your mic or something. I'm getting a little bit of a scratchiness on that. And let me just hear you say something perhaps.
Okay, let's try that. No.
It's, let me hear you.
How about that? You're talking now?
No, somehow it became really scratchy. I didn't see you actually speaking to the mic itself.
Still scratchy? We good now?
Yeah.
No?
Anybody else, let me know if you're hearing that or if it's just showing up.
No, if you're hearing it, then I can pull the plug and use the built-in one. It might be better.
Yeah, let's give that a shot. And just while you're changing that over, I think what he mentioned there about having an interactive component to the course is really valuable. Because, there's one thing to have an online video training course that you spend time creating and you get it up online and you promote it, and then people can go through it and consume the content. But there's something really valuable about having a private Facebook group or a way that you can interact with and engage with your customers, with your course participants. And it doesn't actually have to take a lot of time, because, if people put a question into the private group and tag you, what I do personally is I'll just block out certain times and go in and to respond to everybody that's left a question. So it's not like you have to be on 24/7 communicating with your audience that's going through a course, but the perceived value and the real value that's added by having that interactive aspect of the course is really, in my experience, been one of the highest, highest values that the course participants get to experience. So let's see if you got your mic back, and I'll stop my my interactivity monologue. No. Let's just check the audio on. If you go onto the Hangout and click on that gear, you should be able to select the audio setting, or you can plug it back in. Either way, we'll get this sorted out in just a second. but for whatever reason, not actually hearing you now. Maybe see if you can check the audio input. Otherwise, worst case scenario, drop off and join back on, and I can do a song and dance and entertain everybody. But can't hear you right now, buddy. Maybe that mic, if you did plug it back in, it might have just been a temporary thing. But yeah, why don't you try that? And worst case scenario, just drop off and add yourself back in to the Hangout and check the audio setting if it's plugged in, because now it's not, it's still not on. Nope, it's not coming through. And I think this is a great opportunity to talk about the trials and tribulations of live broadcast versus having an online course. All joking aside, Greg will be back in just a second. But there it is, folks. You know, this is real time. This is live. And Greg will be right back on. But actually, there is a good learning lesson here in the sense that, you know, when you're creating an online course, then you have, and just take yourself off mute too.
Okay.
And we're back.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's not your fault. Sometimes the Hangout technology is a little bit screwy. But I was using that opportunity to say why, you know, when you create an online course, you have control over the final video and the content before you push it out to the world. Whereas in live broadcast, you just get to improvise when things go awry.
Make little edits and fix those mistakes.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah,
So I think we were just, if you had any final thoughts on pricing and escalating the price for your course and substantiating further value in that process, would love to hear that.
Well, so even if you're creating a course that has a lot of the same content, say in your book, but you're adding interactive elements, so whether it's quizzes or assignments or a group or some interactivity between the students, all of that kind of stuff just starts to add value for it. In fact, one thing I saw that someone did really well was for each course they did a 1-month cohort, and in that 1-month cohort they had a private group, and that instructor dedicated basically business hours to be there and answer all your questions for a month. At the end of the month, that was it. You had access to the historical stuff and that, but the group didn't continue on. So you were kind of got this amazing feedback and resource throughout that month, and then that was it. You were on your own. But the nice thing there was that it really incentivized everyone to finish your course in that period of time, which can be an issue with online courses, is incentivizing people to actually get through and finish that.
That's actually a really good point that I want to touch on as well. And just recapping that, so if I understand right, you know, he has a course with all the training and everything is published and available for anybody that joins for all time. But in terms of getting the interactivity, he blocks out a month to do regularly scheduled office hours where you get the personal touch. And I like how you said that ties into, you know, people actually creating the course. I mean, not creating, but utilizing the course, going through it within a finite amount of time. That was one of the reasons why I initially ran my bestseller campaign blueprint training as a live program, was to get people on each week. And in the course of doing that, would create the training videos out of those broadcasts. A couple of different ways to approach it, but any other tips on, you know, engagement and moving people through an online course? Because sometimes the statistics are a little bit, you know, sad to see that, you know, no matter how much uptake there is on the front end, there's an attrition over the course of a program. So, you know, what have you found that really works to keep people engaged throughout the course of an online training?
Yeah, and it's a good point. Typical stats for online courses are sort of 7 to 14% completion rate, which is pretty abysmal. We've found rates as high as 85 to 95% with Thinkific, and there's just really simple reasons why that is. One of them is small bite-sized content. So not giving someone a 30-minute video, giving them a 2 to 7 minute video. Now, even if you have 30 minutes worth of stuff to say on a single topic, I just cut it up into bite-sized pieces, and just between those videos, they have a momentary break just to hit go to the next video. That's one thing. Another is building in mini, super easy quizzes. We call them formative assessments. So it's not a quiz that's really difficult. It's a quiz that just sort of says, were you watching, right? So simple question about something that was mentioned in the video, 1 or 2 questions after a lesson keeps people awake and alive and thinking about things while they're going through. And it gives them kind of a pat on the back when they finish and they get that right and they want to go on and do the next one. Another thing is tracking their progress and completion and displaying that to them. So as they go through, and this is all stuff we do automatically in our platform, but basically as they go through, you show them their completion, you show little tick boxes and you've finished this, and yeah, you've only got 30% more left in the chapter and 70% more left in the course. Those kind of things do wonders for moving people along. And then another big thing is regular reminder emails. So if you see people and you can set this up in an automated way, but basically sending out reminder emails just to say, hey, you're 30% of the way through your course. It's still there waiting for you.
And so, I mean, that's quite a difference if you're going from like 7 to 14% completion rate. And you blew through a lot of really valuable stuff there in terms of different ways to keep people engaged. And as I understand it, those are all things that are built into the Thinkific platform. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so,
the length of your videos, that's kind of up to you.
Well, of course, but sort of talk somebody through that's watching this now, imagining themselves in the role of running an online course. How are they managing that class? How are they migrating people through the learning experience and seeing some of those metrics so that they can intervene if they're seeing, engagement drop off or people stalling out at a specific point in the course?
Yeah, it's pretty easy to do because most of what we do is all on demand. So once you have your course set up, everything kind of runs on autopilot. The places where you might want to jump in and take a look is you can look at the completion statistics, and then we have the ability to go in and say, okay, just these people, I see their completion statistics are below a certain amount, or they haven't finished the course, so I want to email them, or they haven't finished this course or that course. That kind of thing where you jump in, but you can also automate a lot of that with just automated emails like you would your typical autoresponder campaign. And that tends to work well. The people where I've seen the 85, 95%, most of that stuff has just been automated reminders going out and all of the things that are just built in automatically.
Nice. So it sounds like the sweet spot in terms of training video size is somewhere in that 2 to 7 minute range. And so how could you sort of reverse engineer that for somebody that's got their book and they're looking at the content of their book and starting to think, okay, well, where would I make, what videos would I make around this?
Yeah.
And, how, maybe you can talk a little bit more through that process, having worked with and having a number of authors who have created courses on the Thinkific platform in terms of visualizing that transition from book content to online course content.
Definitely, yeah. And that's where I think starting with the end game first and working backwards. So you start with the end game of really, I like to try and answer that question of how will your life be different after you take my course? And if you can answer that question right out of the gate, that is going to help you in your marketing and in your course building, because it's everything you do is going to be structured around getting them to that goal. And so you start with that goal of how their life is going to be different. It's sort of the why of your course. And then build backwards from that based on milestones they need to achieve in order to get to that result. And then break each milestone, which could be a chapter in your book, down into individual steps. And each of those steps can be your 2 to 7 minute video. And if your step is going to take you 40 minutes to teach it, then you want to break it down further into steps that lead up to that step. It's a pretty simple process of just kind of drawing out a little tree hierarchy and starting at the top and breaking it into individual pieces. And I find typically it takes about an hour to do for someone who's already familiar with the subject matter. But it creates a wonderful system for moving forward. And now you can bite off those little pieces and say, I'm just going to make this 2 to 7 minute video today. And you can actually start to take those baby steps forward to creating your course.
I like that because that's very similar to advice that I'll give to authors when it comes to actually writing their book, which is to get first clear on the content framework or with a outline, as it were, and then saying, okay, well, what are the 2 to 5 most important points that I want to convey on each of those topics? That helps you small chunk it down where you're no longer in this position of looking at a blank document and saying, where do I begin, right? And feeling overwhelmed and then not taking action. I'm hearing you say something very similar in just building a comparable document outline for your course based on your book, where you're saying, okay, well, here's the main teaching point I want to cover on this video. Here's the main teaching point I want to cover on this video. And then when you're actually doing the creation process of the videos and the course content itself, you can just say, okay, check that off. Okay, next, check that off. and see the course come to life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess what would your advice be on, like direct to camera training for an online course versus creating slides or doing a screen share? Because I know even within an online course, as specific as that may sound, there's a lot of variation on how you can structure and deliver content. What do you think is most useful and effective for delivering the content within an online training course?
I think it depends a little bit on your comfort zone. Some people aren't comfortable doing a ton of direct to camera. And so in that case, slides can be great. I've seen people do whole courses that are just voiceover slides. And I've seen people do whole courses that are just direct to camera. I tend to be more comfortable with a mixture of both. Because, I find with those slides, you can kind of convey some additional points that you couldn't otherwise, like even when I'm describing that sort of hierarchy of creating your course curriculum, I've got a slide that would be great to sort of show to make that really clear and understandable. So that kind of thing, it's helpful. The one caution I'd have on the slides is minimize the words massively. The biggest mistake is you can have a whole bunch of words on it and some images and you talking and people aren't able to absorb things. So I try and keep it below 5 words a slide. I know that's quite small. Or if you're going to do bullet points, no more than say 3 bullet points of 3 words each. But even that would be more than I'd typically do. I'd pull up just a couple of words, an image, and I'd talk to it, or a graph or a chart or something like that. But if you're going to go the slide route, which can be a great way to go, I just keep it to a minimum. It also makes it a lot easier and simpler to create the slides.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely echo that point. I mean, I've over the course of the summit, I'm doing a lot of direct to camera video, and I'm comfortable with it. It's fun. But some of the best presentations I've ever made were largely just image based.
Yeah.
And, I'm talking or teaching over that. And what somebody's seeing in the process of me describing or teaching on a topic is just one big illustrative image, sometimes with no words, or with, you said 5 words or less. And somebody may be hearing that and thinking, wow, that's like almost no information at all. But that's the point, right? You don't want somebody coming into an online course to simply read paragraphs of text off of a screen while you're talking. I actually think that kind of detracts from the listening and engagement experience. If you've got, block after block of text, people don't know, am I supposed to be reading that or listening to him? And then it just becomes confusing.
Definitely, yeah. And we spent a considerable time before we built the platform looking at the science of the e-learning, so a lot of empirical studies, and it's stuff that we try and build it in a way that you don't need to think about it. But that is one thing that you hit the nail on the head is if you're reading someone you can try it with anyone. Just show them a slide of text and start reading it to them. And then as soon as you finish reading, flip to the next slide and ask them if they can remember anything really that came out of it, because they're getting overwhelmed and they don't have that ability to process the audio and the visual words at the same time. So the way I like to think about it is when you put your slide up, think that you need to stop talking for long enough for them to read and understand everything on the slide before they'll start listening to you. So if there's 1 or 2 words, they do a quick read. Oh, you're going to talk about book publishing. Great. Now you start talking. If there's a whole paragraph, they're not listening to you until they're finished reading that.
That's actually a huge takeaway. That really just helps clarify it for me too, Greg, that when you put up a slide on the screen, and really take this to heart, everybody, people are going to read that because you're giving them a stimulus, right? You're saying, here's text on this presentation. They're going to read that before they're tuned into what you're actually saying. So just as an example, say I was doing a presentation and I had a topic, I had a whole section on self-publishing versus traditional publishing. I would probably have an image and then say self-publishing vs like versus traditional. Yeah. And that's like, 3 words, 2 if you don't count the hyphen.
Yeah.
And so somebody can look at that and being like, all right, now we're talking about self-publishing versus traditioning. Takes a couple seconds to cognize that, and then you're actually tuned into what I would be saying in that case. So I guess try and think about everybody that's watching this and looking at creating a course. Think about the worst class you ever took in college or university, where somebody just put up a huge block of text and started reading it to you, and you're thinking about anything else you could possibly be doing than sitting there reading that. Don't be that person. Instead, think of the main point that you want to make, have it be a couple succinct words and perhaps an illustrative image, and then let your actual teaching and training do the delivery and create the experience that people have.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I just had a horrible flashback to an economics course in college where I was like, "Get me out of here!" Just reading paragraphs of stuff on the slide projector.
Yeah.
So that's not what online course creation is all about, right? It's
No.
about creating engaging content that delivers an outcome to people that are taking part in it.
And the outcome's key, you're right, because economics, you're probably taking like economics 101 or 201. And the end result is you will know more about this subject. That's really not what we want to be going for with online courses. What people pay for in online courses is the result. And so you want to be able to show them that result. So that result is, you will be able to get this job, or you will be able to create this art project, or you will be able to have this fitness skill. That's really what people are paying for. They're not paying for the biology 101 or the economics 101 where they just know more about a subject.
Right. And it's fascinating because there's a whole movement now on online teaching and training. And quite frankly, I've sat in my bed and watched Harvard CS50, the computer science course, free on iTunes. And it's like the bar has been lowered for accessing high quality information that's theoretical and general. So, how should people that are looking at creating an online course think about the positioning, the presentation, so that's really outcome focused and not just, information, perhaps something that's more on the lines of transformation, taking you from one place to another, which is sort of what I think my definition of training actually would be.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Makes it much better situation there.
So, let's maybe move a little bit to the marketing and publicizing aspect of your online course. So now if you're an author, you've sort of taken the content in your book, you've chunked it down into teachable lessons that will comprise your online course. You're focusing on delivering an outcome to the participant, and now you've actually gotten it and you've published your course. What are the steps to really build an audience, build a class or a cohort, and start taking people into and through the training that you've created?
Well, that's one of the nice things about the whole book course relationship is it's really makes for a really wonderful marriage there, because you can use one to promote the other and the other to promote the one. So I see so many different ways between books and courses where you can cross promote. So whether it is pre-launch of everything, so before you're even launching your book, you can create a mini free course. And this is something that you can very easily get out. It doesn't have to cover most of what's in your book, just a small portion of it, or a lead up to it, even a prequel to it. And you can use that as a free course to actually get out there and generate leads, build that email list. Because it's digital and on demand, it's a lot easier to kind of get out there and share with people early on. And then you can use that to sell initial copies of the book or help with the whole pre-launch of it. Then you can go the other way, and we talked a little before this event about calls to actions within books, and you can have calls to actions within your book for either a free add-on course where you're now capturing that email address from someone who's picked up your book. You can have coupons within the book or access to your higher value online course. So now you're taking someone and kind of upselling them from the book scenario to the course scenario where they've gone from a $30 or $40 purchase to a $300 or $400 purchase and really engaged with and join your community. So there's so many different ways of doing that. And then one of the ones that I love that I've seen working really well recently is that people just love to receive physical goods. So we've done everything from shipping people a microphone, hopefully one that worked better than that one. Shipping people a microphone when they bought something, or I think in the case of a book, it's a great add-on. So I actually had someone call me yesterday asking about my online course, and she asked, is there anything that you send me? And she didn't say, book, or it was kind of what she was looking for, but she wanted me to send her something to just feel a bit better about spending $400 online. So I think when you have both assets, it's such a great marriage of the ability to say, I'll sell my course and then I can send you the book, or I'll sell you the book and then you can get access to the course. And that allows you to cross leads back and forth.
Well, I definitely echo that. I think that's very smart. And of course, with all of our publishing work at Lifestyle Entrepreneurs Press, we're looking at how do you embed those next steps that a reader can take to go further into the learning experience, the journey, the training that you as the author actually provide. And so, we'll include just after the cover in most books, some call to action. And it's not like a hard sell or anything. It's like you mentioned, having access to the first module of an online training course, for example. So an easy stair step to go from having the book, and if you're enjoying that, Well, guess what? There's more you can do, and you can go and check out, say, the first module or first couple training modules of an online training course. That's a great way to transition people from a book into a course, and vice versa. I think something else that we've done on a couple of occasions that's worked really well is if you've already written the book and now you're doing an online training course or some training course of some kind, adapting your book or distilling down some of the key teaching points into a workbook format. And I think with actually three of the books that we've published, we've also published a companion workbook. And I think that's something that can be a perfect complement to an online training course, perhaps even something that you send somebody physically that enrolls in the course. There's definitely a value to that. And, Greg, I'm reminded as you shared that story that when I first launched my author training program, right, that I said, look, we'll give you, you can pick any 2 or 3 books that we have published and we'll send you a free copy, right? So not only am I now teaching somebody how to create a great looking book and launch it and leverage it to build their business and brand, but they can actually go through our catalog and pick however many, well, not however many, they can pick a couple books and we'll actually physically send it to them. I got a lot of positive feedback on that. There's a little bit of a logistical effort. And it, of course, has a cost anytime you're doing something physical. But think about the level of engagement and how that sets you apart from other people online if you actually send something that arrives at their doorstep.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time we've done it, it's funny. We'll sell something that's $1,000 package and then there's a $50 physical good in it. And that's what people are most excited about. So it's funny that way because it's coming in, and then if you go a little step further, it gives you the opportunity to throw a little card in there or a postcard or personalize it or something that way. You don't have, we haven't done too much of that, but it does open up that opportunity as well.
Yeah, and I guess this would be a good opportunity to drop in a quick plug that we're doing a similar strategy with the VIP Author Success Pass for the Book, Business, and Brand Building Summit. After we wrap up the summit, we're going to share the Lifestyle Entrepreneurs Press catalog, and everybody that's gotten a VIP pass gets to pick 3 books out of our catalog and get those. And so, there are a number of ways to build something physical, something that's actually delivered, and that just creates a certain excitement almost, because there's so much junk mail, there's so much spam, there's just so much crap. That if you know something that you really want and are excited about is coming, then it even creates that additional level of engagement and enthusiasm.
Definitely, yeah.
So I think that's a great point that you made there. What would you say is a great, if not generalized, approach for somebody that's just launching their course to really enroll that first class or to get that first wave of people enrolled and taking part in their training?
So you're just launching your course and you're looking for getting people involved in it. And now I guess the big question is, do you have a list? Any list? Because there's different approaches if you have a list, and we can definitely go down both paths.
Let's start with no list.
Okay. So
then we'll go to list, which I agree is very important.
So no list, I think there's some easy, no list. I'm going to assume too that people without a list are a little bit new to internet marketing. They haven't experimented with a lot of things. So things like ads can be dangerous. It's attractive to go and say, oh, I can spend $5 per Facebook ad and I'll have a whole bunch of people and I've got $500 to spend. I'll go and get 100 people to come and buy my course. But really, if you're new to the whole scenario, ads can be a dangerous way to lose some money, and it takes some experimentation. So the approach I took when I first got into it, and I still see it work for people, is to take the organic stuff and go with that, the free things, the places where it might be a little bit more time and effort and work on your part to really engage with people, but you also learn a lot more about what people are looking for, what they're saying yes to, what words resonate with them. And then if you make some sales that way, you can start to go and run ads. So, one of the big ways I see working is things like webinars. Now with webinars, of course, you need to start inviting people to that. So that first step, what I've found is so we went away as a team here to Whistler. 18 of us went up, got a cabin, and everyone on our team had to create a course, market it, and sell it within 24 hours from scratch. And this was just a couple of weeks ago, and there was a couple of the people on the team were super nervous about doing this because they'd never done it before. Many of us here are course creators; we've been doing it for years, but some people aren't. And one of the girls, Catherine here, who was a little nervous about this whole process, she totally surprised everyone. And by the end of the first day, she had 60 people enrolled, and by the end of the weekend, she had 100 people enrolled. And what she took as an approach was, she built a super mini version of her course, just a few lessons and sort of the landing page in a couple of hours. And then she went out and actually started promoting it in Facebook groups. Now, not in a spammy way. She had joined the Facebook groups a couple days before and said, hey, I'm thinking about sharing some knowledge on this area. It was actually a course for people moving to Vancouver and relocating and visas and stuff like that. And then she went and got a whole bunch of people to like it and say, yeah, I'm really interested in this. And then she just popped back in and said, yeah, hey, I set it up for you. You guys can check it out. So it's surprising. And for her to go and get 100 people signed up through ads would have cost her $500, $1,000, $200. So just actually going out and interacting with people and being helpful and genuinely helpful and giving away some stuff for free in groups in places where they hang out is a great way to do it. Quora is another good community I find works well for that, where you can just dive into Quora.com and legitimately answer questions. But I think it all comes down to, for the free stuff, whether it's a blog article or a Facebook group or a Quora post, is add value. So come into the situation and give great value to people immediately out of the gate without asking for anything. And once you've started to build that reputation, add some value there, then you can slip in your offerings, your products, get people onto a mailing list, offer them a free course, stuff like that.
Yeah, and Bill, somebody in the comments just said, it's interesting how when people are pressed and they don't know how to do something, how creative they can get. And I love that somebody that was nervous over the course of a weekend got 100 people enrolled in a course, and from what it sounds like, with no existing list or no existing audience on that topic. Is that right?
Yeah, nothing, like literally, no prior experience in the space.
Good. I just wanted to confirm that, because, that's one of the biggest concerns / objections, saying, but what if I don't have a list or an audience? Well, look, then that probably tells me that you're moving into the online teaching and training space concurrent with building your course and getting out there. And that's fine. There's a lot of different avenues into becoming, known online and building an audience. But this is a great one, because if you really think about it in context, an online training course, well, what are you doing? You're teaching people, you're interacting with them, you're supporting them. So if you can begin that process in a way that's not paid, then it's just simply a progression from where they find out about you initially and start learning from you through to the point where they've achieved the ultimate goal and outcome that you can help them provide. And somewhere on that progression, there's a time when they take out their wallet and give you money and continue that learning journey with you. So, I just encourage everybody watching this to take Greg's story to heart, and the person that sounds like created the How to Move to Vancouver course, and just think of the overall experience you're going to provide as a progression. And if you're starting over here, you're moving along, that could all be free, whether it's the first module of your course, whether it's going into existing communities where people are talking about and interacting on these subjects and adding your voice to the conversation. That's all moving you along. Then at some point you say, okay, if you're really ready to go all the way with this, then I have X, Y, and Z. And you describe the course, what people will get from it, and give them a real option to go further in that relationship with you. That's a great way not only to start building an audience, but also to build an incredible amount of goodwill and to get engagement, because the people that went this far with you are going to go the rest of the way with the same or more enthusiasm. So I think that's pretty powerful advice. And now maybe we can look at the other side of that coin. And for somebody that already does have an audience, or maybe they've got a few books out in the market and they have a great readership and relationship with their readers, and now they're saying, okay, well, how do I transition that into an online course? What advice would you have for that person?
Well, I think depending on the relationship you have with your audience, there's different strategies you can take. If they're people who've read your book and they're already fans, then really just, I think at that point, an invitation to learn more from you, to participate in more programs that you have, and that going out via email and saying, I've got some other programs that you can check out. whether it's a free intro course to just warm them up to the idea of online learning, or if it's a whole package that builds on top of your book and takes it to another level. If you've already built that relationship with them, then even just the invitation to come and get involved is great. If you're looking at kind of reaching out to relatively new people, so for me, for my list, a lot of the people, when they join the list, they came from an ad or a Google search and hopped onto the list really quickly for something free, and then I had to take the time to convert them. And the biggest things that I've been successful with there in converting people is, well, webinar is definitely a big one, where once you have some people coming to your list or on your list, is inviting them to a webinar. And again, back to the principle of add value. So you give away some of your best stuff on the webinar and add a lot of value, and then show them where they can get more, which would be in your online course. That's one way that works really well. It's email marketing. I mean, I know we've heard lots about it, but for me, once someone signs up for my list, I'm hitting them up with a ton of value. So for me, it's sort of 3-to-1 value to sale. The first 3 emails they're getting from me are just super valuable. Even I'll send them videos, I'll send them articles, I'll send them worksheets, all sorts of stuff that I know that they want help with. I'll ask them questions. I have a few. One of our most successfully performing ones is just the open-ended question. Hey, what can I help you with? And you actually get responses, and then you have to respond to them. But those people convert at like an 80% rate once you've actually had an interaction with them. So the strong email marketing of just adding value. And it doesn't take a ton of time to do. You just have to sit down and write really quality, valuable stuff that you know they want help with.
Yeah, I'll share my own experience with this summit. You know, I've received advice to say, look, after somebody gets the welcome email, set like a 4-minute delay timer, and then have another email that's super short that just says quick question. And in that email, it says, look, what's your number one question or concern about creating a great looking book and getting it out there and making it a bestseller? And that's exactly what we did. So, 4 minutes later, somebody is still presumably in their inbox. So you've still got the attention that you had once they registered for, in this case, the summit, but in anybody else's case, the free offer that you have out there. So while you've still got their attention, creating an actual dialogue. So it's 2-way instead of just push, sending more stuff. Now, I can say that the response was a little overwhelming because we've had, upwards of 6,500 people register for the Book Business and Brand Building Summit. And lo and behold, hundreds and hundreds, maybe over 1,000 emails at this point, of people writing back, telling me what their number one question or concern was. And I've done my best to answer almost all of those personally.
Yeah.
But if nothing else, it's incredibly insightful to hear people just telling you, this is what I'm concerned about. This is my question. This is what I want to know. And then actually helping to tailor that in. Some of the questions I've asked you today, Greg, some of the questions I've asked other people that have appeared on the summit are a result of the overarching themes that I've noticed. So
right.
I think that that's valuable in the context of online course creation and delivery too, is it's not just you on a soapbox saying, here's everything I know about this subject. It's having a 2-way street and being responsive to what people are learning about. And sometimes that can be as simple as just asking. And so, with that one email, I gained a wealth of insight into the audience for this summit, and also just, what are hundreds and hundreds of authors and aspiring entrepreneurs thinking about, worrying about, and have questions about. And that is intrinsically valuable. So I think that's a great point that you made as well.
Yeah. And it's great to hear that you actually started to sort of change the content of the summit somewhat, or direct it based on those themes, because it's exactly what I've done with online courses. Is you once you start to see the same question coming in. So for one of mine, I had a whole bunch of people saying, I'd really like a study schedule. So I put together a little Excel spreadsheet study schedule, dropped it into the course, or actually for what I did for a long period of time was I would just personally email it to each person. I'd just change the name on the top of the file and send it off and say, hey, I put together a study schedule for you. And that added huge value for people because it was exactly what they were looking for. And I knew that because I asked them.
Yeah, that's super solid. And I think that's a pretty good tip. So, as we start to bring this to a close, what else do you think is important that, we may not have touched on as it relates to online course creation, the whole process, front to back? And please tell everybody a little bit more about Thinkific your platform and what you guys have, and then we'll start to bring this to a close.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I just say one thing about the whole marriage between courses and books. Again, I just see it as a really good relationship, because you can use one to promote the other. You can use one to promote the next one that you do. You can have the call to actions in your book leading to your course. I mean, I'm reading a book, just read one recently called Scaling Up. It's sort of the next version 2 of the Rockefeller Habits. And literally once or twice in every chapter, they refer to some online resources. Not just at the beginning, they've got it riddled throughout the book, and it all leads to online courses. And it's a PDF download of a worksheet that they're talking about in the book, or something like that, an extra resource, an article they want you to read. So it's just such an amazing ability to pass people back and forth between the two. And really what that results in, I think, is a bigger brand, a greater interaction with your audience, a larger audience, more tools to give them, and more revenue. So if part of this whole thing is revenue as a goal for you, I've seen people who, I mean, I think David Meerman Scott's a good example. He goes out and he'll do speaking gigs for $20,000, $30,000. He'll sell his book for $30, and bestseller, newsjacking. He's got a bunch of other books too. And then in that middle ground, he had nothing. In that sort of anywhere in between, someone could come and get his book, or they could have their company spend $30,000 to have him come and speak, but nothing in the middle ground to get more. So when he created online courses, it just created a whole new opportunity for revenue. So I think that's probably one of the biggest opportunities on the course space, especially for authors.
Yeah, I'll add one thing in addition to that, which I think is great advice. If you're in a situation where you've got that middle, say you have some really great high-end offering, and you've also got a book, which is usually an entry point in terms of price point. Even though a book can be incredibly valuable, it's usually priced somewhere $10 to $20. And what goes in between? I mean, like in my case, at the higher end, we have our done-for-you publishing and bestseller launch service through Lifestyle Entrepreneurs Press, and that's in the thousands of dollars range. But at the entry point, somebody can get any one of our books or get a copy of my book for around $15 for a paperback. And in the middle, I've got an author training program that has a few different tiers, but between $600 and $2,000, that if somebody isn't necessarily ready to invest in a full-blown publishing and book launch package, but is beyond just reading something at a more entry level about the process, then an online course is, in my business and in many others, a great, I call it a mid-tier priced product, right? It's not your most high-end service delivery, one-on-one coaching, live event type of experience, but it sits in a really comfortable place that can earn you recurring income and deliver a deeper experience to your readers, your customers, and clients. And it's scalable, which is probably one of the best benefits about it, and accessible 24/7.
Yeah.
So with that, thank you so much, Greg, for coming on, and please tell everybody anything else that you think they should know about Thinkific. And my intention here is to give our whole audience exposure to your platform as a way that they can start tackling creating their own online courses.
Great. Yeah. Well, so I mean, I like to live what I preach. So I really just came here to add value and try and share advice with people. That's what we like to do every day. But if people are interested in checking out Thinkific, essentially the simple thing is it's a platform that makes it very easy for you to create your own online course. You do it under your brand with full control over everything, makes it easy to there's even free tools to add voiceover slides built right in there, free tools to promote it, and then all the e-commerce stuff to go out and actually sell it. So it's kind of everything that I dreamed of or wanted when I started creating my first online course, but couldn't have. And back to some of the points so if I like to make it easy for people to check it out. So what we can do is anyone coming out of your summit, if they mention the Book Business Brand Summit, then we can give them a month free on our business plan, which gives them access to all the features, no fees. They can play around with it and check that out. Plus, I've just finished putting together our pricing course. I haven't actually launched it yet, but it's a course that walks you through in detail all sorts of pricing strategies for online courses and some really specific things about when to do payment plans, how to use coupon codes, all of that kind of stuff. So I can give that to people as well as part of it all. If they're basically, they just need to come sign up and then hop onto the business plan and mention to us. They can shoot us a note inside the platform to say that they came from Jesse Krieger's Book Business Brand Summit.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for that generous offer, Greg. Really somebody out there practicing what you preach, showing up here on a Saturday live in the, I know you guys had a party there and everything last night. So thank you for making the time and for your generosity. And I've shared that into the group, and I'll link that up under the replay so that everybody knows. If you mention the Book Business and Brand Building Summit, you get a free month of Thinkific, so you can get in there and try out the platform. And as you heard Greg say, somebody on his team in the course of a weekend went from no course to having 100 people enrolled. What can you create over the course of a month that would more than justify staying on the platform? So people are saying, thank you, Greg. Thanks so much. It's great information. And he says, I think there's so many questions out there, but so little time. But I think we've covered what we can on the time that we have. And so with that, I'll let you give a big Book Business and Brand Building Summit farewell, and we'll shut this down.
Thanks, Jesse. I really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone at the Book Business Brand Building Summit.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on a future interview training presentation. Go out there, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you on the next one.